All right, let's talk about one of the most powerful and, honestly, kind of terrifying ideas in the business world, the innovator's dilemma.
And it all kicks off with this really counterintuitive question. How is it that the best companies, the ones we all admire, the ones that seem to be doing everything right, suddenly just fail? It's not for the reasons you think, I promise you that.
Okay, check this out. Back in 1964, Fortune magazine is just singing the praises of Sears, calling it one of the best managed companies on the planet. But this quote, it captures this absolutely chilling moment. Because at the very same time they were getting all this praise, Sears was completely ignoring the rise of discount retailers. You know, the very thing that would end up destroying their empire. So they're getting awards for doing everything right, while at the same time making a mistake that would prove fatal.
And this brings us to the core, really shocking idea of the whole thing. Great companies don't fail because they get lazy or bureaucratic. No, they fail because the smart, logical, totally competent decisions that good managers make every single day are the very things that lead to their doom. The problem isn't bad management, it's good management. Wild, right? So how on earth does that even happen? Well, to get it, you have to understand that not all innovation is the same. There are two completely different kinds, and knowing the difference, well, it's everything.
So, on one side, you've got what's called sustaining innovation. This is the stuff we all think of, right? Making a good product even better for your best customers. You know, a sharper camera on your phone, a faster chip in your laptop. Big, established companies are masters at this. But then there's disruptive innovation. And this is a whole different beast. It's usually simpler, cheaper, maybe more convenient. And at first, a company's best customers, they hate it. It's technically worse based on what they care about. But what it does is create a totally new market out of thin air.
And this difference is so important because it leads to this pattern called performance over supply. What does that mean? Basically, companies get so good at making their products better and better that they actually start improving them faster than what their customers even need. They end up packing in more performance, more features than the average person can actually use or even wants.
And that right there creates a really dangerous gap. Picture two lines on a graph. One is technology, shooting up at this steep, super fast pace. The other line is what customers actually need, and that one is growing much slower. That gap that keeps getting wider and wider between what a company can make and what people actually want, that's the perfect breeding ground for disruption. Let's make this real with a classic example, hard drives. Back in the early 80s, the big companies were all making these huge 8-inch drives for mini-computers. They were obsessed with more capacity, lower cost per megabyte. Then this little 5.25-inch drive shows up. Was it better? Heck no. Not for the mini-computer guys anyway. It held way less data and was more expensive for what it stored. But it had one killer feature. It was small. Small enough to fit inside this brand new thing called a personal computer.
And here's the real kicker. That disruptive tech, it doesn't just stay in its little niche market. Oh no. The companies making those small drives just kept making them better and better and better. Remember that steep technology curve? Well, eventually they got good enough to meet the needs of the mainstream mini-computer market. And that's when they invaded from below, offering a solution that was smaller, cheaper, and suddenly good enough. And just like that, the old leaders were toast.
Okay, so if this pattern is so predictable, why do these brilliant companies keep falling for the same trap over and over again? The answer is, it's kind of painful. It's because they get caught in the trap of doing exactly what they're supposed to do, listening to their best customers.
See, every successful company lives inside something called a value network. The best way to think about it is like its DNA. It's the whole ecosystem. The customers, the profit margins, the internal processes, everything is perfectly tuned to serve its current market. It's the very thing that makes the company so successful in the first place. Okay, now put yourself in the shoes of a manager inside that company. Someone brings you this disruptive idea. It's simpler, which means lower profit margins. It's not good enough for your best, most profitable customers. In fact, if you go ask those customers, they'll tell you flat out, we don't know that thing. So, what does any sane, rational manager do with their budget? They kill the project. Every time. And this leads to this tragic, predictable, six-step dance of death for the big company. It almost always starts with their own engineers inventing the disruptive thing first. But then, marketing takes it to the big customers, who, of course, say, nope. So the project gets shelved. Management focuses on the sure bet, profitable stuff. Meanwhile, some tiny startup grabs that same idea, finds a new market that loves it, and starts growing. Before you know it, that startup is moving up market. And by the time the big, established company finally wakes up, realizes the danger, and goes to dust off those old prototypes, it's way, way too late.
And here's the thing. It's not that these big companies can't build the new tech. They totally can. It's that their very own processes, their culture, their values, the things that made them so successful, are perfectly designed to kill these kinds of disruptive ideas. Their greatest strength becomes their greatest weakness. Good management literally becomes a disability. Man, this all sounds pretty bleak, doesn't it? If good management is the problem, what are you supposed to do? Well, the good news is, it's not a death sentence. There are clear, actionable ways to manage this dilemma, to harness disruption instead of getting steamrolled by it. The solution, believe it or not, involves doing a few things that feel completely wrong. First, you have to give the disruptive idea to a totally different group, one whose customers actually want it. Second, you got to match the size of the team to the size of the market. A small team will get fired up about a small market. Third, you can't have a big detailed plan because the market isn't even there yet. You have to plan to learn and adapt. And finally, and this is the big one, you have to create a completely separate organization for this thing, far, far away from the influence of the main company, the mothership.
And this number here really gets to the heart of why that separation is so important. Think about it. A huge $4 billion company needs to find $800 million in new sales just to hit its growth targets. That's a massive number. But a brand new disruptive market, it might only be worth, say, $20 million at first. To a little startup, $20 million is the entire world. But to that $4 billion giant, it's a rounding error. It's not even worth the meeting time until it's way, way too late.
This idea of organizational separation isn't just theory. Just look at the battle between two of the old retail giants. Kresge wanted to get into discount stores, so they spun out Kmart as a completely independent company. New team, new rules, new profit model. And it worked. Woolworth, on the other hand, tried to launch their version, Woolco, from inside the main company. And what happened? The old, high-margin way of doing things just smothered the new, low-margin business. It was a total failure.
You want another great example? Hewlett-Packard. They saw the disruptive threat of cheap inkjet printers, even though it could destroy their incredibly profitable laserjet business. So what they do? They set up a totally separate division in a different city and basically told them, go for it, compete with us. And they did. The inkjet business ended up cannibalizing the laserjet business. But here's the genius part. HP as a whole won. Because they knew if they didn't disrupt themselves, someone else was going to do it for them.
And that really brings this whole thing home to a final, crucial question for you. This isn't just some business school history lesson. This exact pattern is playing out right now in every single industry. So I want you to look around your world, your job, your industry. What's the new thing that seems too cheap, too simple, maybe even a little bit junky? What are the big, successful, well-managed leaders all ignoring? Because whatever that is, that's probably where the future's being born.